Creepshow 2 is an anthology of shorts inspired by Stephen King's stories. Just like the first film, these shorts are quick and terrifying and are styled in a way that's inspired by horror comics from the 1950s and 60s. This is a fun one, and I hope you'll enjoy, but be warned, we will be covering spoilers in this breakdown as well. The movie opens with a boy named Billy following a truck driven by a ghoul. The man throws a package off of his truck and waves his fingers to turn everything animated, and reveals that the package held a stack of Creepshow comic books. This then transitions into our first story, titled Old Chief Woodenhead. An old couple named Ray and Martha own a general store in a small and mostly abandoned town. Ray touches up the paint on an Indian statue that sits outside of the store.
And just let the brush just sort of bounce around and play.
A man named Chief Whitemoon is the first customer of the day, but his tribe has fallen on hard times and he'll be unable to pay cash for any needed supplies. Instead, he offers to trade with precious jewelry and promises to buy them back within the next 2 years. When the chief leaves, it almost looks like the wooden statue nods at him, but the chief doesn't dwell on this and he drives away. Things quickly take a turn for the worst when a man named Sam Whitemoon, who is the chief's nephew, shows up a bit later and orders his goons to ransack the store.
We're stealing things now. Why don't you ask us to leave? Prune face?
Yeah, why don't you run us out of town, Sheriff?
The men take everything they can, while Sam enters the photo booth to take some quick headshots. Before they leave, Sam demands the package full of jewelry that his uncle gave to Ray. Ray protests, causing Sam to shoot and kill Martha. He then turns the gun on the old man and fires again before making his escape. As they drive off, Chief Woodenhead slowly comes to life. We see a quick sequence as the vengeful statue hunts down the thugs, shooting one full of arrows and tomahawking the other in the garage. He then goes after Sam Whitemoon. Sam tries to hide in a bathroom, but the wooden man breaks through the wall and scalps him on the spot. The next morning, Chief Whitemoon wakes up with the jewelry on his bed. He drives to the general store and understands that his nephew earned the fate that he got. We then cut back to the animated Billy and see that he's ordered some Venus flytraps from the comic book advertisements. But we don't spend much time there as we cut to the next story, titled Raft. We meet 4 friends as they head to a lake to party. The friends are named Deke, Laverne, Randy, and Rachel.
Don't use drugs.
The lake is in the middle of the woods and has a small raft in its center. The 4 waste no time and immediately hop into the water. They swim out to the raft but notice a duck struggling in some strange black goop a little ways away. Laverne is a slow swimmer, and as she's nearing the raft, the rest of the group notice that the goop is drifting closer, seemingly drawn to the 4 people.
It looked like it was going after the girls.
They wonder what the goop could be, and Randy thinks that it's alive, but as they all smoke and get a little loose, they disregard his worries and focus on having a good time. Rachel then reaches into the water to feel the goop, but it comes to life and latches onto her arm and pulls her into the water. She tries to swim out. The friends are too afraid to jump in and help, and Rachel is eaten entirely. They contemplate swimming back to the shore, but now the goop is guarding the nearest shoreline. The remaining trio are stranded for a few hours, but notice that the goop is going beneath the raft. Before Deke can make a run for it, or swim for it, the goop squeezes through the wooden boards and latches onto his ankles. He's pulled beneath the raft and eaten, just like Rachel, leaving Laverne and Randy to try and avoid the slimy creature's probing. Once it realizes that it won't be getting the other 2, the goop drifts back from under the raft and bides its time. Night falls and the 2 survivors decide to hold each other to try and stay warm. They fall asleep, but Randy wakes up the next morning and he decides that it's time for some smooching. While he's distracted, the goop swims under the raft again and attacks Laverne's face. She's pulled into the water and Randy decides that it's time to make a break for it. He swims towards the shore, but the goop is hot on his trail. He makes it in the nick of time, but decides to gloat on the shoreline, allowing the creature to rise up and swallow him whole. We pan over to see a no swimming sign before cutting back to the animated world. Now we see Billy riding his bike, trying to enjoy his comic, but he's confronted by some bullies. The bullies smash his package, and Billy responds by kicking the largest boy and riding away. We cut over to our final story, titled The Hitchhiker. This one focuses on a woman named Annie as she's driving home. She's running late and decides to speed. While she's coming up with some excuses as to why she's late, she gets distracted and hits a hitchhiker on the side of the road. The man is clearly dead, and not knowing what else to do, she drives off before another car comes by and spots her. We then get a Stephen King cameo as a truck driver. He stops and sees the body. A few more cars show up and they call 911 to report what happened.
Guy got creamed, that's what happened. Happens all the time.
Back to Annie, she tries asking herself what she should do and wonders if she can live with this man's life on her hands. She plays some music and decides to keep driving because she wasn't seen and she should be able to get away with it. She passes another hitchhiker, but she stops when she realizes that it's the same man, now covered in blood and hobbling towards her car. She looks away and the man disappears, but he pops up a second later.
Thanks for the ride.
She tries to drive away, but the man hops onto her roof and grabs her through the sunroof. She drives with him on top of the car and decides to head into the woods to try and knock him off. Her plan somehow works perfectly, and she stops to unlock her glove box and retrieves a gun that she keeps there. The dead man then opens the passenger door and she shoots him multiple times until he falls and stops moving. She then starts up her car and backs over the hitchhiker.
I got you!
She thinks the horrors are over, but as she's driving, she sees the man climb over the top of her car. She goes back into the woods and slams the man into a tree and rams into him over and over until she hits her head and knocks herself out. Annie wakes up a few hours later and sees that the body is gone, and she assumes that she was just hallucinating the whole thing.
The whole thing was a dream.
She makes her way back to the road and finally makes it home. When she tries to exit the car, she's greeted by this. The dead man jumps onto her, and a bit later, we see her husband come home to a garage filled with exhaust, and his wife dead and holding the hitchhiker's sign. We then go back to Billy and see the bullies are hot on his heels. He seems to be cornered, but he smiles, and it seems that he's lured the bullies into a trap. Venus flytraps rise from the ground and devour the boys, ending Billy's bully problem, and giving us an end to Creepshow 2. This movie is not nearly as good as the first one, but I still really liked it. The stories are simple, but they get their points across, and the practical effects were pretty limited, but when they were around, they were great. I also really liked the overarching story's animation style. It reminded me a lot of like Page Master. I used to love that movie as a kid. So that's a plus for this one, I guess. Overall, I'd say that this was a decent sequel that suffered a bit from a lack of budget, but it kept the fun nature of the first film, and it's definitely worth a watch. If you enjoyed this breakdown, then don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you have a movie that you'd like me to watch, then put that down in the comments below. But yeah, beware of ghouls and Venus flytraps, I guess. Bye-bye.
"5 years ago, Stephen King and George Romero, two masters of the macabre, created their hallmark of horror, Creepshow. Many would argue that nothing of significance has happened since. Until now.
What are you doing in my swamp? What are you doing in my swamp?